Hello everyone and welcome. So today I'm going to teach you how to make realistic backgrounds for your comic or manga using photos and 3D materials. So quick disclaimer, one of the key features we will be using will be the converted lines and tones tool. So unfortunately, if you do not have the EX version of Clip Studio Paint, this feature is not available to you. But I will be showing you an alternative technique you can do that doesn't require it. With that being said, I do highly recommend you trying the EX version of Clip Studio Paint for this feature. It can cut your workflow almost in half, and honestly sometimes the results of your backgrounds may be night and day if you do not have access to this feature. So let's jump right in. So here we have the photo I'm going to be using to turn it into a background. I have two copies of it open. One I'm calling EX and the other I'm calling Pro. We're going to jump right in and do the EX version first. It's only going to take a minute or two, so already you can see what I mean when I say that having this feature will definitely help cut your workflow in half. So we're going to go to layers and convert to lines and tones. We're going to click preview, and already you can see that it's on its way to becoming an image for our comic. So we're going to go to our preset and click comic.screen tones. Okay, now we're going to play around with the line thickness and line density. So both sliders are self-explanatory. This is just going to control the thickness of the lines we are creating and the density. Mainly, I use the line density to control how detailed I want it to look. I think I do want the lines right here in the building to show, since I am going for a more realistic background, so the more details the better. I will have the line thickness rather low and the density around this number, and remember to always have remove fragments at 10. This looks good. Now we're not going to worry about the posterization selections yet. We're going to switch to tone right below our preset. You can see there's another option for posterization. Right now we're just going to have it as a tone, and I will show you why, because we're going to go to the Pro version and catch up to where we are right now. So this is how it's going to come out as a tone, and what it has done is it has created your line out with your tone in a separate layer beneath it. So let's switch to Pro and catch up to where we are. Now we're looking at our Pro version. Since we can't use convert to layers and tones, what we're going to do is change our express color to gray, because our end goal is to have our background in black and white, which would be monochrome. So now we're going to go to layer again after changing our expression color to gray, and go to new correction layer and click brightness/contrast. In brightness/contrast, we will play around with the sliders to get our ideal look in our black and white. And voila! Another option you can do to get to this point is, instead of adjusting your brightness and contrast, you can click gradient maps, and there you can adjust our white and black without having to change the expression color. The difference between the two is that your gradient map will be more complex in how it processes creating that black and white look. Most of that quote-unquote complexity in the color profile will either be lost or barely noticeable in making a difference when you compare the two when we switch to fully monochrome with our tones. So honestly, it is up to you and what you prefer. Alright, so now you can merge your gradient map layer or brightness/contrast layer with the photo, and now if you see the effect tool area here, it's going to say tone. And now we are in monochrome, and boom, just like that, we've caught up with the EX version. We have all the tones now, and honestly, if you look at the Pro one, the results there look much better as of now. If you play around with the sliders when choosing gradient or brightness, like I said, the gradient map option can end up looking exactly like the brightness/contrast option, and vice versa. It all comes down to what you're going for. Me, I'm going with the brightness/contrast option, so I will delete the other merged layer. This is why I'm showing you both the Pro and EX techniques in tandem, because you're going to have to pick and pull from both. But of course, unfortunately, if you're only Pro, you won't be able to use the EX version of converting lines and tones. You can still achieve the EX results, but you just have to do more of the work and yourself manually, which is commendable. But when you're facing deadlines, you'll definitely want that EX feature to help you out. So as you can see, the tone is looking better in Pro, and if you go back to where we were in effects, you can see posterize. If you click posterize, you can see we now have the values we can create and adjust to get our ideal shading in monochrome. So to summarize this post, for both the EX and Pro techniques, you have two options for your backgrounds in monochrome. Option 1 is to leave it as tones, and option 2 is to have it continued to be posterized. A quick Google will tell you that leaving it just toned or having it posterized is not inherently better than the other. They are just different techniques used for different artistic or technical purposes. To explain posterization simply, it is the process of reducing the number of tonal or color levels in an image, resulting in large areas of solid color. So this would be ideal for your comic to create a more graphic stylized look to your background so it can better match your character's art style. Whereas just leaving it in tones would be when you need a more sophisticated color adjustment beyond simple posterization, aka you want those hyper-realistic backgrounds. Now let's switch back to our EX, and I'm going to show you how our posterization will look like in the EX version and why it's better in the EX version. So I'm just going to Control Z and go back to where we were to convert to lines and tones. The settings will be the same as your last use. So now when we go to tone, I'm going to click posterization, and now you can see the same slider of values we can create and move just like the Pro version. So now I'm going to fiddle with it and get it to how I want it to look like. So now here is where the EX version is better than the Pro. Once I click OK, if I'm doing it posterized, it's going to create separate layers of all the different values of tones that you can hide, edit, and move separately from one another along with the separated line art. Very convenient. Whereas in the Pro version, if they're all on one layer and you can only play around with the values, and of course there's no line art that comes with the different tones for shading. So if I try to erase or edit / refine it, it's going to affect everything, including the stuff you don't want to touch. This makes the EX version superior in my eyes because, for example, I like how without this value, the windows are wider, making my background pop more. So instead of having to remove or alter the entire value, I can just go to the layer and erase the value only in the window and on the roads and etc. I can more easily refine my background's tones, add on to them, and remove them as I please, and the tones / shading is what usually does the heavy lifting in giving your background that realism. So that is the technique. I hoped you learned a lot from it. I would highly recommend you manually retouch it once you finish, whether you're using the EX method where they hand you the main line work on the silver platter, or whether you're using the Pro version where you'll have to go over your tones manually with your pen or line tool. There will always be lines missing that you need to add or excess lines that should be removed to unclog your panel and give it a clean finish. Now that you're aware of how my method works, you can stop at any given point if your background is in monochrome and looks good to you, or if you just want to use it as a reference, or completely overhaul it and do more revised line work and shading yourself, especially if you're making your comic not in black and white. I know mangaka who have a similar method like Inyo Asano, the creator of Pun Pun, where he uses camera pictures, then goes on to retouch them in a way that only they can. At the end of the day, you want something that expresses you, so retouch it and definitely make the background stand out as yours. And remember to use original photos to avoid copyright related issues. Thank you for watching. I realize I did not go over every possible tool and edit that can be done within this method, like how you can change the shape of your dots and etc. But this is really the meat and bones of it. I am by no means even that much of a standard professional in the industry, so this is basically my crude way I came up with of getting the job done for my illustrations. I encourage you to play around in Clip Studio Paint and maybe discover even more efficient add-ons to this method, or at least other interesting things that can be done with these tools. Bye bye everyone.